Imagine a creature literally so massive that it makes the ocean boil. I mean, for millennia, this entity has just completely haunted human imagination, right? It bridges this wild gap between ancient biblical mythology and actual prehistoric biology. Today, we're diving into this explainer to unravel the mystery of how early humanity tried to make sense of the world's most terrifying environments and how modern science eventually brought us face to face with the truth.
So, when we strip away all the centuries of pop culture, literary references like Moby Dick, the modern fantasy movies, what are we actually left with? What exactly was the Leviathan in those original historical records, and why did it command such absolute, foundational terror? Well, to figure that out, we really need to look at what the earliest sources tell us about this creature.
Historically, the Leviathan is defined very simply, and honestly, terrifyingly, as a monstrous sea serpent. It wasn't just a really big fish or a misunderstood giant squid. The earliest sources specifically categorize it as a serpentine apex predator of literally impossible proportions. Keep that specific visual anchor in your head as we go, because that serpentine description, it's a massive piece of the puzzle.
Section 1. The Primal Terror. Before we even touch the paleontology and the hard science, we've got to understand the sheer emotional weight, the absolute primal terror that the deep, unexplored ocean held for early civilizations. Just picture it. You're sailing on a fragile, creaky wooden vessel thousands of years ago, pitched in the pitch black of a starless night, listening to this vast, churning expanse of water right beneath you. No sonar, no submersibles, zero scientific understanding of oceanic ecosystems. To those early humans, the deep ocean was the ultimate unknown. The Leviathan was basically born from this exact psychological space. It was the physical embodiment of the absolute unknown.
Which brings us to Section 2, Middle Eastern Biblical Origins.
The Leviathan definitely wasn't just some localized campfire story. It was deeply, deeply embedded in ancient Middle Eastern theology. Its origins actually trace back to earlier Canaanite myths of Lotan, this terrifying multi-headed sea serpent. But by the time we hit the biblical texts, which is really the core of where this myth exploded, the creature's description becomes even more awe-inspiring. In the book of Job, the Leviathan is literally described as breathing fire, with scales like impenetrable shields and eyes like the dawn. It leaves a shining wake in the sea. And then in the book of Psalms, it's a creature so incredibly mighty that only the divine could crush its multiple heads. It wasn't treated as a metaphor, guys. It was treated as a very real, very potent rival to humanity, written right into the foundational texts that guided ancient societies.
Moving on to Section 3. Symbol of Ocean Chaos.
The sources explicitly tell us that the Leviathan stood as the ultimate representation of two very specific things: chaos and the completely uncontainable power of the ocean. Those ancient writers didn't just see a monster. They saw the physical embodiment of a chaotic, natural force that human beings absolutely could not control, predict, or conquer. And why did they need a symbol for this? Because personifying an unpredictable, deadly threat makes it just a little bit easier to comprehend. When a sudden storm wiped out a coastal settlement or swallowed a whole fleet of merchant ships, well, that was the Leviathan at work. Giving a name and a face to the absolute terrifying power of nature helped early societies process the trauma of living entirely at the mercy of the sea.
All right, Section 4, the real prehistoric Leviathan. When we actually juxtapose that supernatural biblical serpent with the fossil record, modern science offers a seriously thrilling revelation. This is where the myth meets reality. The chaotic, uncontainable power described in ancient texts wasn't entirely imagined out of thin air. Scientists and historians now understand that human beings have a super long cultural memory, and legends of sea monsters can often be tied straight back to actual massive predators that once ruled the ancient oceans. The myth was, in many ways, just a shadow cast by a very real biological terror.
And here is the payoff. The myth connects directly to a massive, very real prehistoric sperm whale, known as Livyatan melvilli, named, appropriately enough, in honor of Herman Melville's classic Moby Dick. And let me be clear, this wasn't some gentle giant filter feeding on krill. No way. This was a hyper-carnivorous apex predator that lived roughly 9 to 10 million years ago during the Miocene epoch. It possessed teeth over 14 inches long. 14 inches! They were designed specifically to hunt, kill, and tear apart other whales. It is entirely possible that early human encounters with the colossal, fossilized skulls and teeth of these ancient creatures, just eroding out of coastal cliffs, formed the very foundation of the biblical Leviathan myth. The ancient Middle Eastern symbol for chaos was actually rooted in a real-world biological monster.
So, we've seen how the biblical sea serpent, the ultimate symbol of ocean chaos, connects directly to an extinct hyper-predatory whale. And it leaves us with this absolutely fascinating question. What other ancient myths are simply shadows of forgotten prehistoric realities? I mean, if the Leviathan was real, what other monsters are hiding in the fossil record just waiting to explain our oldest stories? Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll catch you in the next Explainer.